Our next guest speaker, he works at FireEye as a cybersecurity consultant to help the government and the enterprise sectors across GCC region, utilizing the FireEye technologies, services, and intelligence in an effective way to meet their business requirements in terms of advanced cybersecurity operations. He will be speaking about FireEye. Please, big round of applause for Mr. Khaled Alateeq.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Good morning, everybody. So, in October 2016, it was my first time to be in a stage talking about cyber threat intelligence. A couple of weeks later, after that conference, one of our clients called me. And I attended that meeting, and he was discussing with me their requirements towards cyber threat intelligence. So I started talking to them about cyber threat intelligence, tactical intelligence, operational intelligence, strategic intelligence, all of these kind of things has to do with intelligence. And at the end of that meeting, I spent almost 25 minutes talking about cyber threat intelligence. And what he told me that, Mr. Khaled, we are actually not ready to this too advanced topic. We have many things to handle right now, so I think we'll just postpone talking about this topic for a year or something. In mid of 2017, this client was breached with APT 34. So they asked actually a consulting company to do the response for that breach. So during that response, that client actually, that executive, has been through all the cycles of the response. He saw how the incident responders talking to cyber threat intelligence analysts and how their communication, they're giving more context to their incident responders. And during the weekly briefings to the client, he saw how the incident responder giving the briefing about the threat actor from an operational perspective. And at the end of that engagement, he attended the recommendation, short and long-term recommendation, which is called the strategic intelligence. At the beginning of 2018, that executive actually moved to a different organizations, and he called me right away. He told me, Khaled, I've learned cyber intelligence the hard way, and I need to do my investment right now for cyber intelligence. At the beginning of that engagement, the client, he was seeing a lot of claims from different vendors about the cyber intelligence, because every vendor, they have a specific or different definition for what's called cyber intelligence. So for today's presentation, I'll be trying to explain the difference or the differences between each type of threat intelligence. Sometimes you are seeing IP and signature reputations, feeds, and sometimes seeing threat data feeds, and sometimes seeing cyber threat intelligence. So I'll be explaining each one of them and the limitation for each one of them, and how these kind of threat intelligence can help you to align your IT security spending with the organization requirements and goals. So I mentioned that I'll be giving you an overview about this, and then I'll go about the differences between them and the value of CTI, and at the end I'll give you some takeaways. So most of the vendors, whenever they visit you, they will talk about this, this kind of the alerts and how you handle them when it's from a SIM perspective, from incident response perspective, and CTI. But none of them most of the time talk about the last circle, which is the human event prioritization. Because, so there's no argument that all of these kind of terms, either data feeds, IP, signature reputations, or CTI, all of them, they have value, but they have limitation. So signature reputation data feeds, whenever you're seeing a feed from the vendor that you're dealing with about, for example, the IPS, secure gateway, or the next generation firewall, this is actually, this kind of intelligence is helping for the blocking mechanism, but it has limitation. The limitation with this, I remember like in 2017, I was like at the premise of one of our clients, and they're trying to send some emails to one of their third-party contractors, and the email is getting blocked. And when we checked that, we found that the domain of that third party, they were breached like 9 months ago. And because of the signature data feeds, they have no aging most of the time. So it was a blocking, and the vendor themselves, they didn't update their database. So they have many limitations because they are like, most of the time they're focusing on the historical data. They're focusing only on for what's so-called malwares. For the street data feeds, sometimes most of the vendors, they have what's a so-called research lab or intelligence network. So most of the time they will do a trend analysis. They will take, for example, sometimes they will say, we have seen on our firewalls in the last 6 months, 1, 2, 3, 4. They help a little bit with giving a pattern of that malwares that will help you to identify that you have a malware, but still, none of these two focusing on the attacker themselves or the threat actor. Most of them are still like focusing on the weapon itself, not in the one that's holding it. But cyber threat intelligence, it's actually most of the time, or it is essentially based on a human processed data. It is adversary focused and forward looking. It is customized for each region and industry. So whenever there is like a provider that has a genuine cyber threat intelligence, most of the time they will having a big investment in a human doing the analysis for the threat actors and their targets, their motivations. Most of the time they have a different type of language skill set and cultural background, so they can understand the motives of that emerging threat and the vulnerabilities that are available at these kind of businesses that will be targeted. So as if you can like imagine how's the difference between threat data feeds and threat intelligence, it will give you like a view from different sides for who's the attacker and what they do and their motive, what they want to do, why they're coming after your business. But threat data feeds will give you, say, like, this is bad IP or this is bad domain, that's all. And actually, it is giving the businesses another issue, another problem. They have a problem, they invested in data feeds, end of the day, they end up having more alerts, more volume of warnings, and they cannot investigate all of that. They cannot do it. But cyber intelligence will give you a priority based on your threat profile and what things that you need to focus at, which is actually, it is shrinking the problem. So the value of CTI, so CTI tends to be more costly than data feeds or IP and reputation, our signature reputation, but it has so much to give. So the visibility into threats. So rather than focusing only on the indicators themselves, it will focus on the attacker, what they want to do. Or like they're focusing on the tomorrow's detection, not on the yesterday news. It gives the IT managers a good insight to which application system that they need to focus at, but they will be targeted from these kind of threat actors. They will not say, like, for example, you need to defend your organization from all the threats, but you have a specific profile, for example, based on your industry, your geography. They will tell you like what things that you need to focus at. For the incident response itself, so as we talked before about the threat data feeds or the IP and signature reputation, now you have something to focus at. You have a threat profile, you know who's going to come after you, maybe just only 2 or 3 threat actors, that's it. This is their TTPs, this is how they operate. Now, whenever there is a matching, for example, you have the threat data feeds or the cyber threat intelligence in your SIM, you are matching it with your environment. You are seeing what's really relevant to you. So instead of seeing like thousands of alerts per day, you'll see like 10, 20, 30, which these incident responders and the SOC staff, they have the time to actually triage or to validate these alerts. So it's actually enhancing the incident response process. And there is a study from Ponemon Institute. They said the average cost is $20,000 for each day that the attacker was active in your network. So imagine that your staff, they're having the time to validate these alerts, and they can actually stop or contain that kind of threat. Imagine how much can you save. For the incident communication, so don't you ever think that whenever you go to, for example, most of the time, you, as an executive, you go to the senior management or the board of directors, you are seeking their cooperation, you are seeking their funding. So do you think ever that the CFO, whenever you go to him and you ask him or her, you ask her that we stopped 1,000 alerts in the AV last week and we need more budget? Initially, that the CFO couldn't understand anything from what you said. But if you go to the CFO or the division manager or the executive or board of directors, and you told them that last week we stopped an advanced threat actor coming from X country, they are targeting our blueprints, our new project, they will start to understand. Your communication will be clear to them. At that point, they will be convinced. Then they actually, the CTI at this situation help to translate the tactical or the technical stuff into a business language, which is most of the time understood by the business people. For the strategic planning, so not all of these actors working like worldwide, blindly. They have specific regions, they have specific industries and businesses. For example, cyber criminal groups, and most of the time are like focusing at the financial and insurance services, and in specific regions. So for your planning, from the CTI, it will tell you what threats that might come to you, based on your geography, based on your industry. Sometimes you don't need to waste kind of investment in a technology that will not be used. You are bringing this kind of technology to stop a specific threat, but it's not coming for you. So it's gonna help a lot for your strategic planning and investment on what things you need to prioritize, what things you need to invest at or on, and actually will help the security team's productivity and like what capacity of the staff that you need. So the takeaways, what we had talked about at first. So now I believe that you understand now what do we mean by IP and signature reputation. You know what the data feeds mean, and the CTI, and how it can help in different things. It's giving you more visibility into the threats coming after you. It's helping your incident response process. It's helping the communication or translating the IT risk or the threats into a business language. And fourth, it is helping your strategic planning and investments, which then you will have an improved decision and strategic decision making. That's all. And if you got any questions, you're more than welcome.
A quick question: that what is the false positive rate for CTI? And can you compare it with the traditional false positive? Thank you.
So most of the time when we talk about false positives, it has to do with the, for example, statistical data, for example, malwares or IP or something. During my presentation, I mentioned that CTI is processed by humans. So the false positive is almost nothing. And when you're talking about the false positive, it has to do with the malwares or something. And mainly in the FireEye company, which is doing incident response most of the time, we have witnessed breaches that didn't involve any malware. It was like from A to Z of the breach itself, and there was no malware at all. But there was some TTPs. So during, like, if you understand your threat actor and how they, like, what kind of TTPs they are employing, based on the TTP which is developed by human, you'll be able to detect that kind of threat actor in your environment. So we're not talking about malwares, we're talking about threat actor itself. Go ahead. Morning.
Good morning, Khaled.
Good morning.
Thank you for this great presentation.
Sure.
I like the example you started the presentation with. I think I know many organizations in the region who they are. I mean, leaders in the field of cybersecurity, and even they are running the threat intelligence 24/7. But for the example you started with, I think the same situation in the region that many organizations still either they started fixing the basics of cybersecurity and they are struggling with, or even they didn't start. So it's good to hear from you, I mean, experience, how they can play with this situation, how can they play the game because of the new technologies and the new tools in the cybersecurity space.
True. So when it comes to technology, at each organization, let's talk about security controls. You're seeing like 30, 40, 50 controls, and you're trying to correlate all of these in one place. So there is one use case that you can use tactical threat intelligence is by when you have aggregated all of these logs in one place, you can apply intelligence to it, and it will flag out the critical alerts to you. I know this dilemma is happening since ever. I've witnessed that many times. But the function itself, when it comes to the SOC itself for monitoring and detection, most of the time, if you have the incident response function aside from it, and you have the CTI function as well aside from it as well, and all of these are communicating to each other, each one of them, it will help each other. There is a new de facto terms that are used these days, for example, red teamers, blue teamers, and purple teamers. Let's say the blue teamers are the SOC, which is not enhancing at all. If you have the purple teamer that is communicating with the red teamers to test them, and the purple team itself giving the CTI or the new updates about the CTI to the blue teamers, they will enhance a lot through the time. And most of the time, they need assessments, continuous assessment for their capability and their readiness to respond to these kind of advanced threats. Good? Questions? Thanks a lot, everybody.